Movies love their suave, sophisticated killers, and Japan is no exception. However, there might be an overlooked hero when it comes to this horror trope. Throughout his brief appearances in media, this character stands equal with film's greatest psychopaths. His name is Seiji Hasami, a beloved English teacher, and he's about to give his class a lesson of evil.
On the sidewalk, sunny morning, lies a body just oozing life. Someone sneaking around the corner. Could that someone be Mack the Knife? Miss Jenny Diver, oh, Suki Torre. Look at Miss Ladalena and old Lucy Brown. Yes, that line forms on the right, babe. And now that Mackie's back in town. Look out, old Mackie is back.
My name is Duncan Shea, and today we are looking at the Lesson of Evil franchise, for lack of a better word. But I want to address right away that most of the audio in this video was recorded when I was just getting over an illness, so at some points you can hear my voice about to crack. If I waited any longer to record this audio, then I wouldn't have had it in time for J-Horror Month. So let's not waste any more time, and let's get right into it. Seiji Hasami is a high school English teacher. Outwardly, he's one of the friendliest, nicest, and most well-respected teachers at his school. Whether he's helping kids with their homework or their home life, he seems to be genuinely motivated to enrich his class and have them reach their full potential. However, there's a much darker side to Hasami than anyone could have possibly imagined. In reality, he's a cold, uncompromising sociopath, and one that demands complete and utter control over his world. And his world starts with the school. Anyone who gets in his way, be they teacher or student, will find themselves in his crosshairs. And once you're a target, it's only a matter of time before you're a victim. The plot unfolds as Hasami flips between his nice and caring persona and his selfish and egotistical true self. As he strengthens his hold on the school, it begins to attract the attention of a few kids in Class 4. Slowly, the entire class becomes a nuisance to Hasami, who decides the only way to solve the problem is through an early graduation. Lesson of Evil, or Lesson of the Evil as it's sometimes called, is a 2010 novel by Yusuke Kishi. You might also know Kishi from his other novel, From the New World, which was adapted into a critically acclaimed anime. Lesson of Evil was made into both a manga and a film, as well as a TV drama that serves as a somewhat prequel to the film. With the manga spanning over 9 volumes, it is as accurate to the book as possible. And so, it's what we're going to be using here as the source material, except for when otherwise noted. The manga is drawn by Eiji Karasuyama, whose only other relatively popular manga is an adaptation of God Eater. But that's okay, because the art in Lesson of Evil speaks for itself. Kasuyama is a talented artist and knows exactly how to shade Hasami just right to make him go from cool and friendly to menacing and terrifying. Half the pictures I saved from the manga for this video are just Hasami either looking cool or him looking scary. There's not a whole lot of in between. However, the film version is worth talking about on its own, because it is written and directed by the famous and infamous Takashi Miike. Lesson of Evil is a somewhat overlooked entry into the Miike pantheon. In case you weren't aware, but if you've been following this channel for a while, I'm sure you are, Takashi Miike is a director with an insane output, having directed over 114 films, at least at the time of this recording. It's a number that I'm sure will jump up even higher as soon as this video is published. If you look into Miike's filmography, you'll find undisputed classics, as well as unwatchable garbage. Regardless of your opinion on a particular Miike work, he's sure to have another one in his portfolio that will elicit the exact opposite feeling. And yet with this staggering output, his films still feel uniquely Miike. He doesn't feel like a director for hire that's just phoning it in, and that's his underlying charm. Lesson of Evil stands out in Miike's catalog as one of the few that he actually has both writing and directing credits. And that might have something to do with the source material, as violent, psychotic murderers are already something that Miike has covered and is very much interested in. But with such a character-focused story, the linchpin to its success was Hideaki Ito, who delivers an amazing performance as Hasami in both the movie and TV drama. Ito is mainly a TV actor, with this honestly being his biggest role. Though he did play the lead villain in the Kamen Rider 01 movie, so there's that. Look, if there's a way that I can link something back to Kamen Rider, even a series that I don't particularly like, then trust me, I'm going to do it. So with all that background out of the way, let's talk about the actual Lesson of Evil. The TV drama takes place first chronologically and predates the film by a few weeks. Since it was basically used to promote the movie, let's get this entry out of the way first. It is a mix of plot lines that didn't appear in the movie, as well as some of its own original story elements. However, it doesn't fit cleanly into the movie's continuity, despite Ito still playing his role as Hasami. That's because there are multiple characters that are either recast or simply don't exist in the film version. The prologue mainly focuses on the school counselor, who finds herself the target of harassment as she begins to become closer and closer to Hasami. If you were just watching the TV drama, without knowing the premise of the novel and movie, then you might actually be forgiven for thinking that Hasami is a pretty decent guy in this. That's because, for the majority of its runtime, he barely does anything, let alone anything evil. In fact, you get more scares out of a completely different teacher, who also just happens to be a murderer. This character was a murderer in the original novel, and his crime was omitted from the Miike movie for the most part. In the book and manga, his dead wife is only uncovered at the very end, with it explicitly being a crime that Hasami couldn't commit. It seems like a pretty strange and disconnected plot thread, and that's because it kind of is. The guidance counselor is also a character from the book, one that Hasami uses to gain information about his students similarly to the TV series. However, she never learns about his manipulative side until the end, and more importantly, spoilers for the drama, she lives until the end of the book. Hasami doesn't kill her like he does in the drama, and he even plots to start a relationship with her after his big massacre. We do get to see a little bit of his life in America, which was only very briefly touched on in the manga and movie. In the manga and the movie, it's shown that Hasami gets involved with some shady underworld dealings, but gets in over his head. After that, he flees America and comes back to Japan in order to start his job as a teacher. But we'll touch on all that later. However, here in the TV drama, he's just a generic stockbroker who, spoilers again, eventually kills his coworker over something really petty. If I haven't made it clear enough, the drama does not impress, and at worst, it gives off a really weak impression of how ruthless Hasami is. And that's sort of a fault of its own design. The film and the book are all built around ramping up tension until you get to this long, intense, bloody climax. But because this is a prequel, not only can it not do anything similar to that climax, it also can't do anything that would surpass it. So it's stuck not doing much of anything. You can watch it for the puppet show at the very beginning, and then turn it off after that. Where the real meat of the story lies is in the film. And the manga too. The movie and manga follow basically the same plot, so I'm going to be jumping between them visually. But I'll point out when something is exclusive to one version or the other. First thing you should know is that Lesson of Evil is a slow burn, no matter which version you're picking up. While Hasami is no doubt the villain from the very start, you're going to have to wait a little while before you see him killing anyone. The kills come a little bit faster if you read the manga rather than the movie. But either way, you're going to be waiting a pretty long time until you get to an extremely large killing spree. The early parts of the story almost feel like a typical high school drama, with Hasami playing a more well-put-together great teacher Onizuka type. His class even has a cutesy nickname for him, Hasumin. Students come to him with their problems, and inevitably he helps them out. However, it's always revealed to be, in some way, a way to further his own shady agenda. The most notable example is Mia, a student who's being sexually harassed by another teacher at the school. Hasami comes in, shames the teacher into giving up on Mia, only for Mia and Hasami to become a couple immediately afterwards. His relationship with her is predatory, and the story makes no excuses. However, the manga makes things more explicit, and honestly feels like it might be having a little bit too much fun portraying this horribly problematic relationship, to the point of maybe fetishizing it a little. The film actually keeps things more chaste, at least between the two of them. It's no secret what's going on and what they're doing, but it doesn't really glamorize it, and it definitely doesn't sexualize it. At least not in the same way the manga does. In either adaptation, though, what Hasami is doing is bad, but he's not the only one. The art teacher is involved with a male student. After Hasami finds out, he uses this as leverage to extort cash and cars from this teacher. Ironically, this relationship might be more sexually explicit in the movie than it was in the manga, but I guess that just shows where Miike's priorities are. In a storyline cut from the movie, the school nurse is sleeping with one of the students, only for it later to be revealed as a setup by Hasami to keep tabs on said student. Hasami is also sleeping with her too, by the way. The early part is high in drama, and it keeps you invested in who's sleeping with who's getting expelled, and how is Hasami going to keep everything under his control. And the students are too wrapped up in these little dramas to realize Hasami strengthening his grip on the school as a whole. See, he really doesn't have a goal, at least not until a certain point in the movie. He doesn't set out from the beginning to kill his homeroom class. Instead, all he wants is total control over his surroundings, which leads him into taking out students and teachers that get in his way. We do get a glimpse into his past, seeing how Hasami killed his own parents. And we also see how his time in America had him running back to Japan, but the film expands on this with the addition of a serial killer whom Hasami befriends and ultimately betrays. You see, Hasami had a moral issue with his friend who only killed for pleasure. And in this scene, I honestly believe him.
You like killing for pleasure, huh? Not me. You take blame. And a fucking run.
If we look at Hasami's actions up until a certain point in the story, he really only kills for self-gain. He kills so that he can have power over a situation. So it's no wonder then that he chooses to be a big fish in a little pond. Or maybe more accurately, a shark. Unlike in the dark, seedy underworld of America, in the school he can use his wits and cunning to get around any problem, in a way that might not be as easy to do against trained killers. But that being said, what makes Hasami so likable? Ito's performance, for one, as well as Karasuyama's art. But it's also in the type of character he is. While by no means endorsed by the plot, there's a sort of power fantasy that comes with him, similar to characters like Patrick Bateman or Hannibal Lecter in Hannibal the TV show. We're not supposed to root for these characters to succeed, but there is something in their ability to wriggle out of a bad situation, one that's completely of their own making, that the viewer is naturally envious of. They are these larger-than-life personas that orchestrate these master plans within minutes, and there's some definite appeal in that. They also balance an outwardly sophisticated and successful life with a murderous and sociopathic inner world. In a certain way, Hasami is the Japanese American Psycho. And if this movie was slightly more popular, I'm sure he would be up there in the pantheon of literally me psychopaths. And all too appropriately, the narrative deliberately draws parallels from Hasami to Mack the Knife, a serial killer character that eclipsed the popularity of his own original story, most famously remembered with his jazzy tune that Hasami himself whistles. But I want to stress again, what really makes this work for the film is Ito's performance. He really does appear to be that teacher that everyone likes, at least on the surface. And even when he begins his killing spree, somehow, that persona never fades away. Well, we've put it off long enough. Let's talk about the ending massacre. During the first half of Lesson of Evil, Hasami ramps up just how evil he is, not necessarily just in kills, but also how brazenly and openly manipulative he is. He begins to act like he's untouchable. This culminates when he decides that Mia is now more trouble than she's worth as a high school girlfriend, and plans to fake her suicide as her class sets up for the school festival. However, after being caught in the act, Hasami has no choice but to kill another student in order to cover up his crime. Pretty soon, he realizes that the easiest way to cover up one killing is with 30 killings. And once deciding that, he cuts off his students' access to the outside world and begins to hunt them down with a shotgun one by one, until his whole class has graduated. This section of the story begins in volume 6 of 9 in the manga, and an hour and 20 minutes into a 2 hour and 10 minute movie. That means that the massacre lasts for about a third of both versions, which is actually quite a lot of time to spend on it. It's at this point that the story goes from soap opera to battle royale, as the kids are running for their lives to get away from Hasami for the duration of it. During the killing spree, he is unstoppable, murdering anyone unlucky enough to come within his sights. And what makes this worse is just how much glee Hasami takes in each kill. At no point does he drop the nice guy act. He slaughters with a smile on his face, as if he was simply giving them a slap on the wrist for being late to class. Sometimes he'll even recount funny anecdotes about the student that he's about to kill. And it's made even more disturbing by the fact that these are characters that we sort of like. I wanted to keep the focus of this video on Hasami because that is the most interesting point of Lesson of Evil, but the class as a whole gets a good deal of fleshing out leading up to their teacher's rampage. So much so that you're rooting for them to make it out alive, even when it's clear that they stand no chance. They're not just one-note camp counselors. They're fully realized characters with their own lives, motivations, hopes, and dreams, and you're watching each of them get cut short one by one. And it's as the killing continues that we actually see Hasami start to lose it a little for the first time. He starts talking to his shotgun, which of course talks back to him and has this weird monster appearance. In the manga, the shotgun has a feathered raven-like appearance, which is a recurring motif throughout the series. But in the film, the gun talks to him with his dead serial killer friend's voice, and looks more fleshy and organic, which to me is the perfect way to show Hasami starting to slip a little bit too far into the pleasure killing that his serial killer friend was all too eager to do. Before this, Hasami only killed when he had someone in his way, but now he's gone on this unstoppable killing spree, and he's learning that he might actually take pleasure in killing too. The entire last act is this school massacre, which, of course, in true Miike style, is hardly in good taste, but still manages to be very entertaining. For the most part, I'm not gonna lie, once you see the 20th kid get blasted by Hasami, it might start to get a little old. Which is why I honestly think the manga might work better, slightly. The book was written as a serialized novel, and I think that episodic nature lent itself better to a manga than a standalone movie. But the film is still a Miike film, and that alone makes it worth watching. Now, if you've seen the film, then there might be one burning question on your mind. Because, after all of this violence and massacre, Miike's film ends on a literal to-be-continued message. If you're like me, watching through the first time, you might be assuming that the film's sequel would be adapting, maybe the second half of the book. But that actually isn't the case. Lesson of Evil is actually fairly close to the book and preserves a lot of the book's key elements as best as it can. The biggest omission is a teacher named Sonata, who is maybe the sole objectively good teacher in the whole thing. He gets framed into a drunk driving accident by Hasami earlier on in order to get him out of the way. Little side plots like that are omitted, But from start to end, everything in the movie was taken from the book. And while this ending scene did happen in the book, it was by no means a cliffhanger. Allegedly, Miike and Kishi wanted to write a follow-up to the film, and I have no idea what it would have been about. The book has slightly more of an epilogue that picks up where the movie ends. It briefly goes into Hasami's trial, where he would ultimately be found legally insane and avoids the death penalty. So if you're watching the film and itching to know what's beyond the to be continued, well, that's all maybe just a chapter's worth of material to pull from. In true Miike fashion, Lesson of Evil 2, Too Evil 2 Lesson, probably would have been its own thing. But ultimately, the sequel never came together, leaving Lesson of Evil as just another bloody gem in Miike's filmography. I think Kishi and Miike were so compelled to make a sequel because they fell in love with Hasami's character. How can you not? He is the whole reason that I made this video. Be it in film, print, or television, Hasami has a unique, charismatic hold over the audience. So much so that I'm even willing to overlook some of the flaws of the film. If you watch Lesson of Evil, you might find it overly long or convoluted at some points. But I guarantee you will come out enthralled by Ito's take on the monstrous Hasami. In the same way that we can't help but watch cold murderers like Bateman or Hannibal, Hasami delivers a lesson in evil that you won't be forgetting.